My son and his wife completely ignored me at their housewarming party. My 10-year-old granddaughter whispered, "Grandma, I want to show you something very important." She led me to a hidden room and I was breathless and speechless. 30 minutes after we left, something unexpected and shocking happened. "Grandma, listen. There's a strange noise coming from the storage room." When my granddaughter Emily told me this, I headed to what was supposed to be my workshop. Suddenly, I heard voices there. It was my husband John and my son's wife Sophie. "Oh, thank you so much, father-in-law. Harry is so stingy. He won't even buy a single piece of jewelry for his own wife." "Well, if something like this is good enough, I'd gladly give you anything." In exchange, anger began to bubble up inside me. 30 minutes later, when my son Harry saw this situation, he said to me, "Hey Mom, could you let me handle this? I've been letting her swim freely, but until now I couldn't get any evidence." "This is perfect." Harry smiled slyly. "My name is Rose. I'm a 65-year-old housewife. I've been doing crafts for both pleasure and profit for many years, and now I also work as a handcraft artist." My husband John is 68. After retiring from his company, he found a job at an acquaintance's business. We have 2 sons who have both moved out and started their own families, and we stay in touch with them regularly. We had several problems, but the most annoying one was that John showed absolutely no understanding of my hobby, handcrafting, which was also my passion and reason for living. I've loved needlework like embroidery and knitting since I was little. My interest in handcrafting grew from there. It became my job when our sons were still in elementary school. At one point, John fell so ill that he needed to take leave from work, which drastically reduced our household income. While nursing him, I looked for work to help make ends meet, and home-based work suited me best at the time. I've always been good at detailed work, and once I focus, I don't stop. I pick things up quickly. The companies I contracted with kept referring me to other projects, and eventually, they recommended I take accessory making classes. By the time John returned to work, I had become an assistant instructor for one of those classes. John thought of this as just a part-time job. As time passed, I went from being an assistant to an instructor, and eventually, I was given my own class to teach. But gradually, my teaching hours increased beyond what John considered a part-time job. I knew this might be problematic. John wanted me to properly take care of the household and didn't approve of me working full-time. By then, John had safely returned to his workplace, and our life had stabilized, so I decided to become a craft artist working from home. Around that time, internet promotion and sales systems were becoming more sophisticated. I initially used blogs and later image-focused social media to showcase my work. Eventually, I became a fairly well-known craft artist in those circles, but John seemed to have no understanding of this at all. From his perspective, I was just playing around at home by myself after quitting my part-time job. For instance, we lived in a modest-sized apartment. When our 2 sons were living with us, I didn't have my own room. Even after our sons moved out for college, John claimed their rooms as his studies, and my workspace remained the kitchen, just as it had been during my home-based workdays. Well, the kitchen table was actually a good size for my work, but when John discovered me working there one day, his reaction was terrible. I had spread out tiny accessory parts on the table to dry, but he got angry and dumped them all on the floor. I hurriedly picked them up, but the carefully crafted pieces were scattered, and I had to redo the work. I explained the situation to my customer and got an extension on the deadline. From then on, I became very conscious of John's return times. I was constantly frustrated. Why did I have to work in secret, hiding from my husband? This continued to smolder inside me. After our sons got married, there was nothing mediating between my husband and me anymore, and our days just continued in a bland routine. I would work on my projects while John was away, being careful not to leave any traces, while perfectly maintaining the household and pretending to be a full-time housewife. John had no interest in our finances, so he didn't know I was earning a decent income. He wasn't interested in our savings either. So to John, I probably looked like a housewife who was just spending money on some hobby. Eventually, John retired from the company he'd worked at for years. He immediately got a new job through an acquaintance. The income was much lower than before, but I think he wanted to avoid spending his days face-to-face with me. Around that time, our son Harry suddenly visited our home with his wife Sophie and made this announcement. They were planning to build a new house not too far from our apartment. "Mom and Dad are getting up in years, and I'm starting to worry about you. Having you with us, father-in-law, would make us so happy." "Oh, is that so?" John is always soft on Sophie. He always looks pleased when she says something to him. After agreeing to live together, I began financial discussions with Harry. Harry knew that for moving significant amounts of money, his mother was more reliable than his father John. This was because our sons had wondered how they could attend private universities without even applying for scholarships. When they got jobs and began to understand the value of money, they asked me how much savings we had, how much their education had cost, and where that money came from. On the condition that they'd keep it a secret from John, I told them what I'd been doing. I had paid most of their tuition. My sons told me I was amazing. I'm grateful for that. They've continued to visit us regularly since getting married. Harry's daughter Emily loves beautiful things and always gazes at my creations with admiring eyes when she visits. However, when I offer to give her something she likes, Emily just shakes her head, saying, "Mom wouldn't like it." Emily's mother, Sophie, was something of a problem for me. She maintained a good public face, but from what Emily said, there was something untrustworthy about her. Mom loves these detailed, sparkly accessories. If I had one, she'd say it suits her better and take it away. It was hard to believe, but Emily continued. And Mom's so rough, I know she'd end up breaking it. That's why she couldn't buy sparkly things, Emily complained. I was appalled at such childish behavior toward a child who loved cute, sparkly things. I wanted to say something, but Sophie always put on a good face in front of me and rarely showed her true colors. For some reason, whenever she came to our house, she would flatter and fuss over John, satisfying his vanity. It was around this time that the idea of building a new house came up. Harry said something that made me happy. You've gone through so much for us, Mom, so I'm planning to include a workshop for you in the new house. Really? That's okay. Harry's words genuinely made me happy. What could be called my reason for living, which I'd been doing secretly all this time, was finally being acknowledged by my son. Of course, I could say I was somewhat recognized socially, but it's emotionally difficult when your closest family doesn't acknowledge you. After the house was completed and Harry's family had partially moved in, I was about to bring my work tools and materials to the workshop. However, there were already mountains of cardboard boxes stacked up there. What was going on? Wondering about this, I asked Sophie. Sophie, wasn't that room prepared for me by Harry? She looked at me as if it were nothing and said, Mother-in-law, we still need a lot of things for the house. Don't you think it's perfectly reasonable to have a storage room? But this room was specifically designed for me by Harry. Didn't you hear about that? I did hear about it, but he never complains about what I say, you know? Leaving that groundless statement, Sophie said, I still have a lot of unpacking to do, and left. I stood at the entrance of what was supposed to be my workshop, stunned. For some reason, cardboard boxes were piled high near the entrance, as if blocking anyone from entering. Eventually, the unpacking was completed, and the garden party to celebrate the new house began. The participants were Harry's family as the owners of the house, my husband and me, our second son Leon with his wife, and Harry's friends. I had planned to mention the workshop to Harry, but I never got the chance. Even during the party, John and Sophie ignored me and wouldn't let me broach the subject. Sophie was supposed to prepare the food for the garden party. However, when John said, you should help her out, I ended up being the main cook. I had no time to participate in the party, I just kept cooking and serving. Unlike you, Sophie has to entertain the guests. Since cooking is all you can do, try not to get in the way. That's all John said. I silently continued cooking and serving, over and over. In the midst of this, Emily suddenly came to the kitchen. She had a rather complicated expression on her face, so I asked her what was wrong. Grandma, listen for a minute. I bent down to match the height of the petite Emily. There's a strange noise coming from the storage room. A strange noise? Storage room? The place Mom calls the storage room. Ah, I see. She means the room that was supposed to be my workshop. It's strange to hear noise there when everyone's outside for the party. It's scary. Emily has a sensitive side and is often afraid of darkness and deserted places. I understand. Let's go check it out quietly together. Emily nodded firmly, and so we headed to the room that was supposed to be my workshop. Indeed, there was some noise. I gently opened the door. The cardboard boxes piled high concealed what was inside. Suddenly, I heard a voice. It's become a nice little hideaway, hasn't it? John's voice? Don't you think so, father-in-law? Don't you think I'm smart? Yes, you're very smart. A sweet, doting voice. I hadn't heard my husband speak like that in ages. Father-in-law, what about that thing I've been asking for? Ah, yes, this. The sound of something being taken out. Oh, thank you so much, father-in-law. I've always wanted something like this. Harry is so stingy. He won't even buy a single piece of jewelry for his wife. If something like this is good enough, I'd gladly give you anything. In exchange. This was bad. I couldn't let Emily hear what came next. I hurriedly took Emily outside. Grandma, those voices were Mom and Grandpa, right? I couldn't help but put my hand to my forehead. You know, Grandpa has been giving gifts only to Mom for a while now. What about Emily? Emily silently shook her head. Grandma, Grandpa comes to our house when I'm not there. Only when Mom is alone. Didn't you notice how happy Grandpa was when this house was finished? I sighed deeply and hugged Emily. What a terrible thing to let a child realize. At that moment, a thought occurred to me. Hey, where's your father now? At the party. Outside, I think. Could you go get your father for me? Tell him to come quietly? Perhaps understanding what I was thinking, Emily immediately went to call her father. However, as the host of the day, it might be difficult for him to slip away. After a while, Harry arrived and peered into the room from behind the cardboard boxes. Flirtatious conversation and atmosphere were clearly coming from inside. Although, if you listened carefully, John was clearly the more eager one, while Sophie seemed to be half-heartedly playing along. Harry stood listening intently for a while, then nodded as if he understood and gestured for me to go outside. Mom, could you leave this matter to me for a while? For a while? What do you mean? Well, I've had my suspicions about Sophie for some time. So he had noticed something. I've been letting her swim freely, but until now I couldn't get any evidence. I'm sorry that the room I made for you ended up like this, but let me use this situation a bit. Saying this, Harry smiled slyly. Then, 3 months after the party, one day. How do you know that? I can't accept this. Just as my husband and I, summoned by Harry, were about to open the door, Sophie's shrill voice came through. What's going on? I'll go check. Yes, go ahead. I wonder if John noticed the slight upward curve of my lips. I confirmed the large envelope in my bag with my fingers, then slowly followed John toward the living room where the voices were coming from. Hey, what's going on? We could hear you all the way over there. Oh, father-in-law, please listen. He suddenly says he wants a divorce. What? Harry, what's going on suddenly? Harry snorted with laughter. There's nothing sudden about it. Sophie has been cheating all along. That's a lie. Sophie was clearly flustered. It's not a lie. I have evidence. I can show it right now. Oh, and I've consulted with a lawyer who will be here soon. What? What's wrong with you? You've been hiding this from me. You've been suspecting me all along? That's right. Well, there's a lot to say about you. By the way, why are you so surprised, Dad? Harry looked at John. Well, she's your important wife, of course. Being an important wife doesn't normally mean meeting secretly in private, does it? Harry's expressionless face strongly conveyed his anger. What do you mean by evidence? And why are you saying this now? Emily is here too. Sophie suddenly brought up Emily's name. That's because I want Emily to hear this too. Emily has known all along that your behavior was wrong. What? Emily, you were suspicious of your mom? It's not just suspicion. You were so obvious about it. Emily, now in 6th grade, glared at her mother. Mom, you've been asking Grandpa for presents all along, haven't you? That's just because he happened to have them and gave them to me. That's all. It sounds so bad to say I was asking for them. What's wrong with happily accepting gifts offered to me? That's the first I've heard of it. I joined in at this point. Hey, Rose, I didn't call for you. You may not have called for me, but I have business with you. I took out a signed divorce agreement from the envelope and thrust it at John. What are you doing? Why are you making jokes at a time like this? This is no joke. This is the culmination of all my pent-up feelings over the years. My voice was eerily calm. Perhaps angered by this, John shouted at me. I won't allow this. Whether you allow it or not, I've already consulted with a lawyer along with Harry, and I know very well that you've been flirting with Sophie. You were using that room as a hideaway, weren't you? I signaled to Harry. He quickly took out his phone and contacted someone. Almost immediately, the intercom rang, and Leon's voice could be heard saying, "Is it okay to come in now?" Emily slipped out of the room to open the door. "Welcome, Leon, Kayla." "Great timing, Emily. Excuse us." We could also hear the voice of Leon's wife, Kayla, and then one more person arrived, a man in a suit. This was the lawyer Harry and I had hired. "Why are all of you here too?" John looked around in surprise. "Well, I'll explain. Actually, I'm thinking of giving half of this house to Leon." "What?" Sophie's voice was strained. "Yes, when Harry told me about it, I was surprised, but if you're getting divorced, it's perfect timing, right? But the divorce hasn't been decided yet. That's just what you think." Harry snapped at Sophie. "That's right, Sophie. We have plenty of evidence of your affairs. Plenty." John was the first to react. "Well, seeing is believing in these situations." The lawyer opened his laptop and showed the screen to everyone. There was a list of video files. Let's start with the most recent one. What appeared was a familiar place, my workshop that had been turned into a storage room, the place John had called a hideaway. But in that footage, an unfamiliar man was moving around freely. "Sophie, what is the meaning of this? I don't know anything about this. This is a trap to set me up." Well, it was indeed a trap. "You had no idea there was a camera in that room." "A camera?" Sophie shouted. "Yes, a camera. One location was in the room you called a hideaway, as shown in this footage. You piled luggage at the entrance so that if someone came in, they wouldn't immediately see inside. Then you placed a sofa in the cleared space and invited someone in through the door that leads directly outside. Now, who exactly is this person?" When the lawyer asked, Sophie shook her head vigorously, saying she didn't know. "Well, we've already investigated this matter." "What?" The lawyer switched the footage. "And this partner, they're all different, aren't they?" The footage the lawyer kept switching to was from a camera attached to the fence. As the lawyer said, this room had a door that led directly outside. It was originally designed as an entrance for materials, but Sophie had apparently been using it to let men in and out. "So what does this mean?" Harry prompted the lawyer to continue. "The reason the partners are different each time is because they're people she met online." "How can you say such things? My daughter is right here." "Mom, you're pathetic. Don't use me as an excuse." Emily interrupted Sophie's words with a shout. "Besides, wasn't this supposed to be Grandma's workshop? Why were you using it for something like this?" "Workshop? You mean you were still doing those worthless things?" John suddenly raised his voice and turned to me, apparently upset about the room's purpose that he hadn't known about. "It's disrespectful to call them worthless." That's when Leon's wife, Kayla, stepped forward. "Kayla, what do you know about any of this?" "I know a lot. I've been a fan of mother-in-law since she was an instructor." "What? Instructor? Fan?" John looked at Kayla with a bewildered expression. Kayla had been one of my students when I was teaching handcrafting. She was always enthusiastic and would bombard me with questions after class. When I decided to stop teaching and focus on being a handcraft artist, she cried, asking if she could no longer take my classes. That's how we started occasionally inviting her over for tea, and she happened to meet Leon when he was visiting home. The two of them ended up getting married. Why didn't you even know about this? My husband and Harry were able to go to good schools and get proper jobs all thanks to mother-in-law who was properly earning money behind the scenes. That's ridiculous. I took out several bank books in my name from the envelope again. These detailed my income during the period when John was recovering and when he thought I was working part-time. They recorded the payments for commissioned works and various other deposits and withdrawals. And the current balance is what? $300,000? That's right. I want to live comfortably in my old age too. With this much, certainly, John muttered. But I have no intention of spending even $1 for you anymore. That's why I'm presenting you with this. I won't accept this. Well, look at this. The details of the gifts you gave to Sophie. What I further pulled out from the envelope was a bundle of crumpled receipts. I thrust them at John. Bags and accessories. Have you ever bought me anything like this since we got married? Well, it's only natural to stay on good terms with my son's wife. She'll be taking care of us in the future. No, she won't. I never intended to rely on either of our sons from the beginning. That's why I saved this much money. You probably don't remember, but do you recall what you angrily knocked off the kitchen table? You have no idea how much that was going to be worth. I unleashed my pent-up frustration at John all at once. What you knocked onto the floor was silver filigree work. What? Silver? That? John looked at me in disbelief. They were small, but there were jewels too. I was assembling them on an official commission. And yet that's because you didn't tell me. I told you from the beginning that it was work. But that wasn't a part-time job. I went from part-time to becoming an instructor. You didn't see any of my efforts during that time. You too, did you know about this? John questioned our sons. Yes, we knew, right? Yes, that Mom worked late into the night. We also know well that Mom's eyesight has gotten much worse because of it. She let us go to the colleges we wanted, worked hard at her job, and still kept the house perfect. And yet, Dad, you did nothing for Mom. Their words gave me a warm feeling inside, knowing they would speak up for me like this. I can't believe how you've treated her, Kayla chimed in. And to use the space that was finally going to be her own workshop as a hideaway? That's unforgivable. Well, a room with no sunlight, what good use could it have? It's only natural to think it's good enough as a storage room. A room without direct sunlight has the best lighting conditions for creating artwork. That's why it was specifically chosen. Kayla forcefully countered. The rear entrance was made so materials could be easily brought in. But you wouldn't even listen when we tried to explain. Well, I never thought those things could be such high-value work. Father-in-law, please look at this. Saying this, Kayla operated her smartphone and showed everyone a certain social media account. Seeing it, Sophie widened her eyes in surprise. This person. There's a famous influencer. That's right, you like this person, didn't you? These accessories were made by mother-in-law. They're quite popular. Sophie was too surprised to speak. And I also found this. What Kayla showed everyone was Sophie's account. Who were you having dinner with here? It certainly wasn't Harry, was it? No, I don't remember going to dinner with her at a place like this. In fact, she hasn't invited me out to dinner for a long time. When it's with Emily, we usually go as a group of 4, don't we? With you all, it's only ever at some diner in the neighborhood. Sophie looked around nervously. What? Mom, you didn't like going to diners with us? Were you embarrassed? It's not that, but sometimes I want to dress up nicely and have a good meal in front of a good-looking man. What's wrong with that? That is wrong, I said, unable to hide my exasperation. Sophie, do you understand what you're saying? And apparently you were paying for these meals. You knew that much? Of course, Harry and Leon exchanged glances and nodded. At the time of the party, when you and Dad had that suspicious interaction, we still didn't have decisive evidence. But that was the trigger for more of your flaws to show. So we had you thoroughly investigated. Why did you do something like that? Stop it. I'm so sick of this side of you, Mom. Emily suddenly cried out. Mom, how did you think your actions wouldn't be discovered? What do you mean? If Kayla can identify your account and see your photos, that means my classmates' mates' moms can easily figure out what you've been doing too. Hearing this, Sophie's face suddenly changed color. And my classmates' moms love gossip and speculation, so they've completely figured out what you've been up to. Can you imagine how I felt when my classmates told me about it? After saying this, Emily burst into tears on the spot. It must have been incredibly embarrassing for her. Kayla comforted Emily. So what exactly do you all want from us? John asked in a voice that seemed to be squeezed from the back of his throat. Don't say us. I didn't do anything wrong. At least nothing that bad. How can you say that? The lawyer intervened to calm down the angry Harry. Sophie, your husband is demanding a divorce on the grounds of adultery. Well, even if you fight it, you'll definitely lose. You'll have to pay compensation. And then there's child support. That's your daughter's right. Wait a minute. Child support means I have no intention of going with you if you two get divorced. Emily stated firmly. Not only that, I'd like to transfer schools if possible. Do you understand? It's all your fault, Mom. Even my friends are whispering and looking at me strangely. Hearing this, Sophie collapsed to her knees. Emily turned away from her mother. Meanwhile, John began to panic. I didn't cheat on anyone. Whether what you did counts as cheating or not doesn't matter. But you've been emotionally abusing me all along. Emotional abuse? John looked at me as if he didn't understand. You might not have seen it that way. So irreconcilable differences or whatever is fine. I just want to be away from you. That's all. I want to do what I want to my heart's content. I don't want to be bothered with you. I'll stay in this house. You can continue living in our old place by yourself. That's impossible. No, it's quite possible, the lawyer interjected. After all, the madam provided a significant amount of the funds when building this house. I understand they were planning to eventually make it a 2-family home. There are enough rooms, so she has ample right to live here. That's what happens when you flirt with another man's wife. And when you've been neglecting Mom all this time. Hearing Harry's words, John also collapsed to the floor. After that, we each got divorced. Sophie ended up living in a cheap apartment to meet Emily once a month, working desperately to earn compensation and child support. As for John, he finally started managing his own salary and savings, and in his late years, he apparently realized how carelessly he had thought about money. No compensation for me, but I also didn't have to divide assets, So compared to seeing the amount in my account, his savings must seem quite pathetic. He ended up having to move to a cheap apartment instead of our old one. Well, he got what he deserved. Kayla, Grandma, good morning. Breakfast is ready. Yay, it looks delicious today too. Leon and Kayla also moved into the new house where I live with Harry and Emily. And as much as possible, we all gather around the dining table. Emily says meals are much more enjoyable than before. I continue working in the workshop with Kayla. How enjoyable it is to have a capable assistant and be able to create works freely. Emily transferred to a different school within commuting distance from this house and is studying hard every day. In the future, Leon and his wife will probably have children. Then it will become even livelier. In this slightly unconventional family, I want to be as supportive as possible.